Happy 60th birthday to one of the most likable people to ever work in the movie business, Keanu Reeves. And we're back, like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Labor Day morning here with me in New York. Once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Believe it or not, and it's hard even for somebody like me to believe, today marks Keanu Reeves' 60th birthday. Keanu Reeves is a true outlier and unicorn, even among the sort of rarefied air of major Hollywood superstars who have had long careers. And in the case of Keanu, it's almost impossible to find anyone he's ever worked with say anything bad about him. He doesn't really do social media, at least as far as I know. And he is very private. He has always been a private individual, even going back to the 90s, like the middle 90s, making movies like Speed and Johnny Mnemonic, My Own Private Idaho with the late River Phoenix. He was not a big personality. He wasn't necessarily a great interview, or he wasn't going to be scandalized or be involved in some kind of crazy situation like Hugh Grant in the mid-90s being pulled over with a prostitute while he was engaged to Elizabeth Hurley. That was never Keanu Reeves. But what Keanu Reeves represents, what makes him a unicorn, other than just seeming to come across as a really nice guy, just the stories that he did not publicize, that he never actually took credit for, but the number of times that he has given parting gifts, super expensive parting gifts, to members of the crew who he felt were helpful, whether it was during the John Wick films, whether it was during The Matrix. But he just seems like somebody who is motivated by something that we can't really elucidate, can't necessarily put our finger on. Just seems like a genuinely nice human being, which doesn't mean there aren't good people in Hollywood they all suck. No. But even with the charitable people who we know about, he just seems different because he never seeks the headlines. He is just a quiet guy who acts and has been in a lot of just fantastic movies and series, franchises. It's somebody who likes to play music. This band Dog Star. It seems to bring him a little bit of peace and contentment. And for those who don't know, Keanu has absorbed a lot of tragedy in his life. He and his girlfriend at the time, Jennifer Syme, they had a baby which was stillborn. And the strain of it, from what I can gather, is probably what led them to end their relationship. But a couple of years later, she died in a car accident. And although this may be a cliche, no matter how much money you have, no matter how much fame you have, you hurt just like everyone else. You feel. And I can't even imagine what that can do to a person. Some people become bitter, embittered. And Keanu, whatever private hurt he still carries with him to this day, he's never taken it out on anybody. He's never seemed to be anything other than what we like to call a mensch, just a really good guy. And he's not the most expressive actor. I think we can agree on this. He's not a master thespian. This is not Dustin Hoffman or Jack Nicholson or Warren Beatty, or I don't think he even has as much range as Harrison Ford, quite frankly. But what Keanu does have is in keeping with what we know of his personality, but even if we didn't know what type of an individual he aspires to be and executes in real time, he is immensely likable. From early movies of his, before I really knew who he was. And there's no way to predict when you see a young actor in a movie if they're going to make something, if they're going to be a big deal 10, 20, 30 years from now. When you go back 35 years and you watch Keanu Reeves in the movie Parenthood, now his character it's a supporting character. It's a legitimate, it's not a cameo or anything. He's so likable in that film. Even as certain characters seem to talk down to him, look down to him, particularly Diane Wiest as Martha Plimpton's mom in the world of the movie, and also a very young Joaquin Phoenix's mom in the world of the movie. But even as she shades him, trolls him, rags on her daughter for being with that Todd, Diane Wiest could have gotten an Oscar nomination just for the way that she says, that Todd. Oh, I guess it's that Todd. Mom, stop calling him that Todd. He also has another ability which can't be taught, and that is to have chemistry with other actors. You can try to tell someone how to do it, but until you see it in action, it's one of those ethereal things when it comes to performance. Doesn't necessarily just have to be acting. When Keanu Reeves, and to be more precise and to give you an example, one of his co-stars in a not very good movie, Feeling Minnesota from 1996. This was, Keanu had made some crappy movies. Johnny Mnemonic bombed after the unbelievable success of Speed in 94. But his co-star in Feeling Minnesota, Cameron Diaz, is another really likable screen presence. And for example, the following year, in the movie My Best Friend's Wedding, I believe that despite the fact that Julia Roberts' character is a bit of a heel, I think we are still supposed to be rooting for her to get with Dermot Mulroney's main character, who is engaged to Cameron Diaz's character of Timmy. But Cameron Diaz is so likable. She is so strong in that role of the fiancée. We really don't give a shit about Julia's character. We don't want Kimmy, Cameron's character, to fail because she is so likable and she has such great chemistry, even with Julia, who consistently tries to undercut her. She's so nice and so likable and believable. We don't want anything bad to happen to her. Now with Keanu, fast forward to 2003, a big hit movie and a kind of signature film for both Diane Keaton, who was given an Oscar nomination, which I don't really understand. The problem is not her performance, the problem is the character, which is absurd. But Jack Nicholson plays a guy who is going out with Diane Keaton's daughter, Amanda Peet, in the world of the movie. He's playing a pretty close approximation to how we imagine Jack Nicholson was at that time in his life. No judgment here. Judgment-free zone. The Planet Fitness, a podcast. His character, Harry Sanborn, is presented as a notorious skirt chaser. Hey, no problem. Again, I don't give a shit. It's a character in a movie. But he then kind of realizes that maybe it's okay if I go out with a woman who's 15 years younger than me, presumably, in Diane Keaton, or 10, or whatever the exact age spread. We don't really know for sure. He has some health issues. Keanu Reeves, in what could easily be a throwaway role, plays Jack's cardiologist. Now, you want to make jokes, you can argue that no actor has ever looked less like a cardiologist than Keanu Reeves, fine. But in the world of this movie, Keanu Reeves is so likable. You can't bottle this up. He's easily my favorite character in that film, because Jack's character has moments where he's kind of a schmuck, and Frances McDormand gets lost after the first act. I love her in the first act. I mean, she's an incredible actress, Oscar winner herself. The movie kind of throws her off. I think first time seeing the movie, so this is great. We got Frances McDormand's going to play a big supporting role. It's like an hour of the movie. We don't see her anymore. That was a mistake. But Jack needs a cardiologist, and Keanu has a crush on Diane Keaton's character of Erica Barry, who is a renowned playwright. And in the world of the movie, we are supposed to root for Jack Nicholson and Diane Keaton to not simply hook up, have sex, but no, they're supposed to be together. Jack should see the error of his ways and stop trying to go out with 23-year-olds. It's okay to go out with a woman who's in her 50s when you're already in your 60s and maybe pushing 70. Bro, come back to me, please. However, the dalliance between Diane Keaton and Keanu Reeves, I think Keanu was actually even playing younger. I think his character's supposed to be early 30s, no more than mid 30s. It's supposed to be a twist on the usual, what we saw from Jack, going for the woman 35 years younger than him. But here you have Diane not really going for Keanu. It's more the other way around. And honestly, they are so good together. Keanu and Diane are so good together. That's the couple that I want to see. I love Jack. Who doesn't? It almost hurts the film how likable Keanu is as a cardiologist. We want that couple to work, not the other one. My opinion. That is something, as I said, that cannot be taught. Now, the other thing with Keanu Reeves that marks him as a complete unicorn is the fact that, depending on how old you are, your immediate identification with him are movies that are 3 decades apart. I defy you to name another actor where the same thing exists. You can't. I mean, you could make up a name, but not like this. For Generation X, young boomers, even some mid-range boomers, we think Keanu Reeves, and we think, catch you later, Bill and Ted. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Parenthood. Point Break. Or if you're a real cineast like me, you might think of him in Permanent Record or the unbelievable River's Edge. Also with his future co-star, Dennis Hopper. River's Edge, same year as Blue Velvet. Dennis Hopper, 3 movies the same year, all with enormous critical acclaim. River's Edge. He plays a guy who has a relationship with a sex toy. Way before Ryan Gosling, 25, 30 years later. He's in Hoosiers, opposite Gene Hackman and Barbara Hershey, great movie, and Blue Velvet. The problem for Dennis in 1986 is he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for the wrong fucking movie. They nominated him for Hoosiers. He should have been nominated for Blue Velvet. Don't you fucking look at me! Where's my bourbon, you shithead? But Keanu, with that innate ability to connect, and Point Break, which came out summer 1991, right before Terminator 2. It's a good thing it was released before Terminator 2 because everything else got swallowed up. But Point Break was an enormous hit. And it's kind of more Patrick Swayze's movie than Keanu. The movie is a little bit different than you expect. When I first saw the movie, I didn't catch what was going on. I said, okay, well, it's just a bunch of fucking bank robbers. No, they're bank robbers that actually have a point. They're villainous, but they're not as bad as they seem. It's similar in many ways to the film from 2016 with Jeff Bridges and Chris Pine and Ben Foster called Hell or High Water, where you have a couple of young guys. In the case of Chris Pine and Ben Foster, brothers, not Foster brothers. Ben Foster and Chris Pine play brothers. And they're on a bank robbery spree. They're just trying to, make a few shekels to... No, it's way more involved than that. I won't spoil it. They're not just bank robbers. And the bank robbers, the ex-presidents, Reagan, Carter, Nixon, LBJ, Patrick Swayze basically plays Reagan, they have a point. But that's a movie where we remember Keanu as Johnny Utah, the FBI agent who learns how to surf. A little weird, but that's what it is. It's Swayze's movie because he has a much more interesting character. But there are plenty of Gen Xers. That's the role and that's the movie that they think of when they think of Keanu. If you're an elder millennial, you're not going to identify with any of the films from the 80s or early 90s. You're probably going to think Thomas Anderson / Neo in The Matrix. Now, I love the first 2 Matrix movies, and I love what Keanu does. And see, this is where it's not always about being a great thespian, about having an incredible ability to emote. And a case in point, with the role of Thomas Anderson and Neo. Now, here's a true story. If we reboot The Matrix, no pun intended, but there is a version, there is an iteration of this in which Will Smith ends up playing Neo / Thomas Anderson, and Sean Connery plays Morpheus, because that was the original idea. And Will Smith has talked about the fact he didn't read a script. Will said, I did not read a script, and then said, I'm not interested. What happened was my management team, and you can Google this, again, you want to check up on my work, please. I don't want you to think I'm just spouting nothing but BS here. But Will's management team had the idea, and the sense that they got was, if Will says yes, the part is his. Again, we're talking about the Will Smith after Independence Day, after Men in Black. He was knocking out one huge hit after the first Bad Boys. He was home run at the box office. So they pitched Will's team, I think it's called Overlook Entertainment or Overbrook, something like that. They pitch him on The Matrix, and Will said, I didn't think it sounded that great. Maybe they didn't explain it as well as they could have. If they had, maybe I would have said yes, but I don't think there is any way that the me of that era would have done it anywhere nearly as well as Keanu. Keanu was perfect, and I would have fucked it up. Who's the man now? Who's the man now? I mean, it would have been fucking hilarious. He beats the shit out of Agent Smith and starts screaming, who's the man now? Absolute gold. But the idea, though, is that because Keanu Reeves is quiet, is meditative, has a kind of a flat line reading, he doesn't seem like a guy who could possibly be the one. Whereas Will Smith and Alpha on screen, think about him in I Am Legend all those years later. And that's a role Keanu couldn't have done anywhere near as well. There are certain times where the Alpha, even if he's not throwing his weight around, you need a certain kind of performer for what you're trying to do. Will Smith, much as I appreciate the guy and respect his talents, he would have been all wrong for Neo for the movie that the Wachowskis were trying to make. And I love Sean Connery, but I'm glad that he turned it down too. I think he ended up doing either Entrapment or Finding Forrester. I'm not sure exactly of the timeline. Entrapment's pretty good. Catherine Zeta-Jones and Ving Rhames. But Keanu was perfect. He was perfectly cast. Because if it's Will Smith, the whole movie, we have no problem believing he is the one. It's fucking Will Smith. I have got to get me one of these. James Darrell Edwards, right? Remember? Men in Black, that was the name of his character before he becomes an agent. The moment in The Matrix when Lawrence Fishburne says he is the one, it hits harder because it's a guy that, well, he can't be the guy. That's why it's so good. And I love The Matrix, and believe it or not, I think The Matrix Reloaded is even better than the first one. I just think Matrix Reloaded is an extraordinary film. A lot of people didn't like it and still don't like it. I don't like Matrix Revolutions. That's 2.5 stars out of 4. The first two, I'll go 4 stars out of 4. They're just about perfect, both of them. Matrix Revolutions was a disappointment. I saw it in theaters. That's actually the only Matrix film of the 4, currently, that I saw in theaters. Matrix Resurrection, I really like. I've seen it 5 times start to finish. I'd give it 3.5 stars out of 4, and it has a greater rewatchability factor. And Keanu, the older Keanu, he gives a more confident performance. I really like what he did in Matrix Resurrections. So the thing is, I saw Speed, if we're going back now more than 3 decades, I saw Speed in theaters the weekend it opened. And it is another example of why, for a certain kind of role, you don't need a great actor. It's enough to just be a great movie star. And Speed, the role of Jack Traven that Keanu plays, opposite Dennis Hopper, don't you fucking look at me. No! But Hopper's, he's hilarious. He's basically playing the guy from Blue Velvet, more or less, although he calls himself Howard Payne. And he's not playing Frank Booth. But the character is just as nuts. He's just insane in different ways. Man, Dennis Hopper was so good at playing crazy. He was so good at playing crazy. Where's my bourbon, you shithead? But Speed, the role of Jack Traven could have been played by any number of other big stars of the day. You theoretically could have slotted Mel Gibson in there. You could have had Costner. It wouldn't have been Stallone. Clint was already not making those kinds of movies. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work with Arnold. Keanu was cast. It was perfect. And the truth is, he had great chemistry with Sandra Bullock. Sandra brought out the best in him in that movie. And it was a big one for her. It certainly established her as somebody. She's so good with Stallone in Demolition Man. Let me point that out. She's the main reason to see that movie. She owns the screen. She has such a brightness and such an effervescence in Demolition Man. I love Wesley Snipes. And Sly is fucking hilarious in that movie. The whole movie is a scream. It's a riot. John Spartan, you are fined 1 credit for violating the verbal immoralities code. That's so much for the seashells. Stallone's saying so much for the seashells. I'm screaming even now thinking about it. So much for the seashells. I'm glad that Keanu... See, not everybody has the radar sense. And Anthony Hopkins would say, if the money's right, I'll do almost anything. But Keanu, similar to Jodie Foster, a couple of years later, he was given, I don't know if it was actual script or concept for Speed 2. He didn't think it sounded good, and he didn't do it. So Jason Patric, a superior actor to Keanu, joined the cast, didn't play Jack Traven. The movie was a disaster. It was terrible. And 97 had some big, successful action movies like Face Off, like Con Air, both with Nicolas Cage. I'm going to save the day. I want to take his face off. Keanu knew that it was not going to be good. It was a cash grab. He sensed it. It's not enough to just make money. I want to actually make a good movie here, if I can. He always tried. And I appreciate the fact that he would stretch. He did a film in the early 2000s. Brian Robbins, I think, was the name of the writer. This, again, is neither here nor there, but I had submitted a script to his company that they supposedly really liked. Oddly enough, it was a baseball script. But we didn't ever end up coming to any kind of arrangement. I didn't get anything out of it other than the fact that, wow, this guy is pretty high up in the industry. He took his time to write me a really nice rejection letter. But what Keanu does in the movie Hardball, it's not a great film. This is 2002. Diane Lane is like a cheat code. No matter what she's in, she's fantastic. She's just one of those special performers on screen that she could make reading the phone book interesting. The same year as Hardball, I think it was the same year, when she did Unfaithful with Richard Gere, she got an Oscar nomination. She should have won the award. She is unbelievable in that film. But Hardball, Keanu plays a compulsive gambler in deep debt who ends up coaching a baseball team. And there's nothing new story-wise. It's so rote. It's so basic. But it works. Because Keanu, you really can see the gears turning. He's delivering his lines in a slightly different way. He comes across as, I hate to say this, an addict who is struggling to deal with his addiction. It's not like an overcoming addiction, but struggling to overcome his addiction. And the irony of the film is, it almost doesn't really matter whether or not he overcomes his addiction. He has his character. The character has an arc, and he does learn a lot in the course of the story. It's one of his finest performances. I say his most likable performance is Something's Gotta Give. Neo is his greatest hero. Sorry, fans of Point Break and Johnny Utah. Now, I've only seen the first John Wick film, and this has been a point of contention since the series got to a part 2 where people have been just urging me, bro, you've got to see part 2, you got to see part 3, you got to see part 4, it's incredible. Part 1 was good enough. I liked it, 3 stars out of 4. I'm just not interested. And I'm a guy who, I love disposable action movies. I've seen Cobra 15 times. Sylvester Stallone, 1986, directed by George Penn. Cosmatos. There are Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, The Running Man. I've seen more. I bet I've seen The Running Man start to finish 20 times. I have no interest in seeing any more John Wick movies. But at the same time, I love the fact that so many young people have adopted Keanu Reeves. He's their guy. Gen Y, Gen Z. They look at Keanu Reeves, they say, it's John Wick. No, it's Johnny Utah. It's that Todd. It's Mr. Anderson. Welcome back. One of the great Keanu Reeves stories is, I think it was after the making of John Wick 3. This I might be wrong. I apologize in advance. But the story came out that Keanu bought almost every person on the crew who had worked directly with him during the film, which would be quite some time. He may have worked with these guys for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I don't know the amount. But each person that was part of the department, it might have been the guys who choreographed the fight scenes, the gunplay, I'm not sure about that. He bought them all like $50,000 Rolexes. And nobody was expecting him to do anything like that. But it just shows again that he appreciates the people who go the extra mile in the business. Not everybody does that. You can be very charitable with your time, with your money. This is something else. It marks him as an outlier in a town with a lot of outliers, but not necessarily like him. And as a unicorn, when there are a lot of multifaceted, multi-talented people, Keanu is still different. There's nobody else like him. There's never been anyone else quite like him. And I don't think there will be anyone else. He'll always be Keanu. And for 60, man, the guy looks great. They even made a joke about it. I don't think it was supposed to be a joke, but they kind of worked it into Matrix Resurrections about such and such a thing, and that's why you really haven't aged. And I'm giggling away because they had to address the elephant in the room. How does this guy still look so fucking young? They hide him behind a beard. Well, maybe he can look a little bit older. For somebody who's absorbed so much tragedy, it's incredible how youthful he looks, even as he hits the big 6-0 today. Happy birthday, Keanu Reeves. One of the greats of a different kind, but a great star who has never lost sight of being a good human. This has been episode 290 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I want to thank you all for spending some of your Labor Day morning with me here in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then, peace.